Hello,
Welcome.
everybody.
Hello, my loves. Welcome. We are so grateful and happy. We're gratitude to have you here um, with us for the Powerhouse Femme podcast. So, hello from me, Alexandria Lita Minor.
Hello from me, Sydney in Alberta.
We're so happy. Okay, so it is nighttime for Sydney right now. It's morning for me in Scotland. And we have come together today to chat with y'all about a bit of a taboo subject.
Yeah, let's talk about sex, baby.
Let's talk about you and me, but let's more talk about sex and me. I think is
Yeah,
going to be more of the topic today, and kind of how we have moved through our own journeys of, and are still moving through our own journeys of reclaiming our own sexuality and our sensuality and love for our bodies.
yeah, for sure.
So I guess I'll start. I'll start and kind of chat about what's come up for me. Like Sydney, I was raised in quite a Christian home, right? Up until I was around like 10, I want to say, like 9 or 10. I was raised in quite a Christian home. My dad was a pastor. I would go into church and I would sing at church. Like, y'all, if you know, I'm not gonna lie, there's still one I was gonna call it one church song. It's not a hymn, but Sydney, do you know the song where it's like, shout to the north and the south,
Yeah,
sing to, that's like the only banger
the
for
East
me.
and the West.
Jesus, I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I still fuck with that one because it's a banger. I like sang it to my friend the other day, and she's like, "What is happening right now?" And I'm like, "You know what? This was a goodie back in the day." But this is how this is what I grew up with. Right? Was like singing in church and um, being around people that viewed sex as not something to be ashamed of, but as sex as something to not be talked about. So sex wasn't really talked about in my household. And it very much was like the man is the leader of the home. And unfortunately, my dad was not the best leader in the home. Um, and not the best, provider. Like he showed up in the best way that he could. Um, but that for me, now that I have worked so much on my own leadership, I'm seeing that wasn't, that was more of the immature kind of masculine leadership, right? Which is kind of something that we've all seen in the church. And I think for myself, one of the things that was, like I was sexually assaulted a few times in my life, three particular times. And I feel like, and I think that some of you will resonate with this and some of you won't. But my relationship with men was so complicated. It felt so complicated. And I think that was a reflection of my own relationship with my own masculine and my own relationship with my own body. So growing up, it was like, okay, like don't show off your body, like you need to be like a pastor's kid, like you're a pastor's kid, and you need to behave a certain way and you need to talk a certain way. And then it was really crazy. Like essentially what ended up happening was my dad was a pastor and then he went into bartending. Like it was just like the craziest. He went from pastor to bartender to child and youth worker. And and then into like, I don't know, like psycho spiritual stuff. And it was just like, what is happening right now? And, he went through all of these different phases. And that was very interesting. But it was also very impactful for me, particularly my relationship with my dad. Um, and that was really a reflection, again, of my relationship with my own internal masculine. And it was like I repressed my sexuality so much up until around like age 17 or 16. And then I started kind of dressing differently, showing more skin. And then come to age 18, like after I broke up with my first boyfriend, well, he broke up with me. That was a sad moment for me. I have this like, oh, I'll never love again. If you know, then you know, like your first love, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm broken. I'll never love again. How am I going to get through this? And obviously we're here today and we got through it. But growing up, it was like, okay, repress your sexuality, repress your sexuality. And then all of a sudden, it just burst. And what actually ended up happening for me after me and this ex broke up, my first boyfriend broke up, it was like all of this repressed sexuality just kind of like I said, like it burst. And I actually became very, very promiscuous. And at the time, I thought it was like, okay, like empowerment, and I'm just having sex with who I want, and that feels good. And over time, I realized, okay, one, this was a coping mechanism to cope with the loss of my brother because I wanted to feel anything that wasn't the pain of grief, right? The pain of losing him. And it was when I was with somebody else, it was kind of like this escape, And two, I realized that it wasn't coming from this space of empowerment. It was coming from this space of this makes me feel worthy. So this makes me feel like I'm enough. And my journey has really been reclaiming my sexuality for me, because for myself, my beauty and my physical body, that has been something that I had given away a lot when I was younger. So during that, 20 to 24 years old, like I said, I was very, very promiscuous. And it was like that was kind of what my value was. That was what my worth was. And it took a lot of work for me to get to a place where it was like, no, like there's so much worth and there's so much value in that for myself, and also in my mind, in the way that I see the world, in my energy, in the way that I hold space for people, like who I am, not this physical body. And that was really, really big for me. So it's been a really interesting journey because during that time, where I was reclaiming my sexuality, what's so funny about that is that I was celibate. So I was celibate for a year and a half, and then I had sex, and then I was celibate for a year and a half or 2 years, and then I had sex again, and then I was celibate for another year and a half. And it was actually during those 5 years where I was kind of mainly celibate, during those 5 years where I really deeply reconnected with my sexuality and my body because it was for myself and on my own. So I would have these like masturbation sessions, like self-love sessions where I would bring in like my crystal wand, where I would bring in music, where I would bring in candles, where I would bring in, all of these like really beautiful aspects where I would give my self massage, breast massage, all of these things. And it really helped me reconnect with my body and reclaim my own sexuality. Because, like I said, even like growing up, even though my sexuality was a little bit repressed up until that, till that time, not a little bit, it was repressed. What was so interesting is that it was repressed and then it wasn't. But in both of those eras of my life, my sexuality was for somebody else. That was still the narrative. That was still the story. Whether I was having sex with someone or I wasn't, and I had to wait till marriage and I wasn't talking about sex, no matter what, it was for somebody else, and it gave me value to somebody else. My body gave me value to somebody else. And throughout those 5 years, like I said, I was able to say, okay, no, my sexuality is for me. I don't need somebody else here to validate it, to give it value. Like it's for me, it's my own intimate relationship with myself. And if I want somebody else to join in, if I want somebody else to be a part of this experience, then great, they can be. But it's for me, it's not for anybody else. And that was a huge um, narrative shift for me around my body, around my sexuality, around my pussy, around sex. All of it is being able to say, like, I can go on a date with somebody and I can go on 10 dates with them and I don't owe them anything. I don't owe them my body.
Yes.
I don't owe them any kissing. I don't owe them. And I think we've really been in this culture where it's like, at least when I grew up, and I think Sydney, you were the same, where it was like, if a guy asked you on a date, if a guy called you beautiful, you owed him something. And this isn't a I Hate Men podcast, just so everybody knows. This is we're talking about this because it needs to be talked about more, one. And two, we're talking about this because this was societal conditioning. And this wasn't specifically on the men. This is what people were taught, both men, women, all genders. Like, we were taught that if a guy asks you out, you owe him something. You have to say yes. You go on the date, and if he pays for the dinner, then you owe him a kiss or you owe him something. If a guy calls you beautiful, you owe him your attention, right? And
Right.
this is even deeper than just the sexuality. This is the sensuality as well. This is the feminine. And what I love right now is, even through the work that Sydney and I are doing with the people that we support, the women that we support, is we are rebirthing this feminine so that she knows her worth, her value, and she doesn't need any validation outside of that. It's again, same thing. I am worthy, I am valuable, and my energy itself is like an upliftment to everyone that is in it. So if you want to be a part of it, that's me giving to you right there. That's me.
Yeah. 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 I
But
think
that's been my
sex.
journey. So I'll pass the mic
Oh,
to Sydney.
no, I was just gonna like iterate on a little bit of that. I think that like sex in general, specifically throughout like societal norms, has been used as kind of like a currency. And while that's
Mm,
sex workers, all of those things, like that's great and all, but that's not what I'm talking about. Like the rhetoric around, well, you don't put out on the first date, you don't put out on the second date, but like third date, like you can put out on the third date. Like the like I very distinctly remember that kind of being like the chit chat among the ladies back in the day. And like, ew, like, why is that something to be expected? Like, well, I took you on a third date, so like, like, no, like, you got to spend time with me. You're welcome.
yeah.
Like, just being in my presence is a present, and you're welcome. There is your gift. And so, like, yeah, I think like seeing that as a currency, and I do think that the generations that are coming up now, like their parents are us, right? Like,
Yeah.
and their parents are the generation right before us, and we don't want to play those games anymore. We're not like we're enlightened. We're waking up, and the paradigm shifting, and we are empowered, and that's beautiful. Um, but it was really funny because you had said something about like how sex just wasn't talked about. So like I remember um knowing about sex for a very long time, right? So I was adopted whenever I was 5.5, and I my biological mother was a drug addict, and I would call my nana sometimes and be like, oh, sorry, mama cannot come to the phone, like she's having sex with so and so or whatever. Like I knew what it was from a very young age. And so whenever my adoptive mom wanted to have the talk, she was obviously very uncomfortable because she was raised Catholic, and she did not want to talk to me about it because I had some questions, right? Like I think I was in third
Yeah.
grade,
Of
and I was like,
course.
listen, here's what I remember. Here's what I think I know. Can you like tell me any details? And then didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to talk about it. And then I got a book. One day she knocks on my door, she hands me this book. It's a cartoon, like illustrated book about what happens, all of that stuff. Walks away. We never talk about it again. And I'm
Mm.
like, that is not how we learn about sex, right? Like I had my period. My mom handed me a box of tampons and a box of pads and said, "Read the directions, you choose what works best for you and you let me know." Like, what? No. Come on now. Like, no discussion. I didn't even know what the fuck was going to happen. And the only reason why my mom knew to buy me tampons and pads was because I sat in the car one day and I was like, "Mom." She's like, "What, Sydney?" I was like, "There is hair down there." Just mortified because I didn't even know that was a thing. Like,
Mm.
why don't we talk about this stuff? Like, how come it's been so taboo for so long? And I can tell you exactly why. Not, I'm not a church hater by any means. I think church is beautiful. I think that Christianity is beautiful. What I don't think is beautiful is the shame that's constantly put on people for their bodies, the shame that's constantly put on women specifically, and the rhetoric behind how our bodies are to be used for the pleasure of men,
How, yeah,
right?
I feel like how scripture has been manipulated in order to serve a particular agenda. Um,
100%.
yeah.
And so, like, I know I was obviously taught that the man was the head of the household, that you were to maintain your virginity until marriage because you owed that to your husband, right? Like, that was a gift
Ooh.
for your husband. Like, ew, that was a gift for my fucking self.
I
Like,
wasn't taught that. I was taught that like, you needed to like keep your virginity until marriage, and then obviously that didn't happen, and like there was a huge
yeah.
shift in my household when I was like around like 14. But the gift thing, like that was not something I was taught. That's wild to me.
Well, I grew up in the South, right? So I grew up in
Mm,
Texas. And it was like Texas is still love Texas, but it's still very much like even a few years ago, whenever I lived there, like women just are not respected the same as men are. Like we do
mm.
not hold as much value. And then growing up there as a kid, like I was
Southern
overly
Belle.
sexualized. Well, I was overly sexualized from a very, very young age, right? So developed really early. Um, Full transparency, was like groomed by a male family member from the time that I was very, very young until I left the house. Um, and so for me, the way that I was raised and the way that things happened, that's like that was normal, right? So like it wasn't
Mm,
abnormal for people to like touch you in inappropriate places or to like grab your bottom or like your thighs or touch your breast or
mm,
like any of those things or make disgusting comments or like any of those things. And while I knew on some level that it felt weird and it did not feel right, also this was like a trusted family member. And like who was I to say that he was wrong because he was a man? And that's the way that I was taught, right? And so get into like dating and stuff. And of course, I'm going to be promiscuous. Like, I was literally taught from a very young age that my value was in my vagina, and my value was what I could give to somebody else, right? And
mm.
so I was overly like, overly sexualized, obviously. And then my brain was like, he will only love me if I have sex with him, right? Like he will only love
Oh
me
my
if I
God,
provide
same.
this. Like, and so it was almost like I did too much. And then like that first boyfriend broke up with him. He tried to drive me off the side of a highway after I broke up with him because he was crazy. And then my dumbass went on another date with him, and that's whenever I was date raped, right? So like great first boyfriend situation there, like super
Oh.
psycho. Um, and then from there on, I honestly kind of like shut down sexually a little bit because I was like
Mm.
overly sexual probably whenever I was around like 15, 16. And then my next boyfriend took it slower. What I've always been in like these long-term relationships, and I've never really had like a one night stand, right? Like
Mm.
none of those things have happened. And so and part of that is again like I was taught that it was wrong. Like whenever everything came out about the family member and the sexual abuse that was going on there, um, my mom, when she found out, was not supportive. It was, well, maybe you shouldn't have been wearing those low cut tops. Your shorts have always been a little bit too short. Your butt was hanging out. So maybe you shouldn't have been such a slut. Like, very much shaming me and my body and the way that I was. Because her, like, one of her first things was, well, whenever you were 5, right after we adopted you, you just ran around naked all the time. Like, and so obviously, like, this was going to happen because you chose to run around naked all the time. My daughter is 3 years old and she runs around naked all the time, and I am not worried about anything happening to her because the people that I have around her are also like safe. And that, yeah, that's that, like, no.
There's
So
no logic in there. Yeah.
there is no logic. What it was really was that my mom, I feel like, because she was Catholic and she also experienced a rape. She was raped by some guy at a mall. Like, it was a very weird story. Like, I kind of, she was like grabbed and raped and then released type thing. Like, a very
That's so
strange, like,
scary.
terrifying situation. Yeah. And so I know for her, like, a lot of it was her own trauma and probably her own repression. Because again, raised very Catholic in Michigan during the 60s and 70s and then 80s. So, like, terrifying. And yeah, just that generation. So part of me can sympathize a little bit. Like, I know that she was doing the best that she could, right? And so,
Mhm.
like, I know part of that came from her own insecurities because that was one of those things that she would later share with me. It was like, well, I was dressed like this whenever I got raped at the mall. Like, and I've always blamed myself for that. And that was why I always thought that I couldn't have kids, was because I started having sex way too young. And so all of those things, like hearing those from my mom, like, oh, well, I couldn't have kids, and I'm pretty sure that's just because I started having sex too young and blah, 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 blah. Like, normal kids start masturbating, right? Like, I was terrified to touch myself because, like,
Mm.
that was just terrible. And then it was not, I did not dress like the rest of the kids. Part of that was because I didn't want to be seen. And the other part
Mm.
was like also just did not didn't want to piss off my mom. Um, or like get the attention of people that I did not want their attention. So I know in high school though it was really difficult because it was like almost like I was torn between two different, like, wanting to be seen and like wanting to dress a little bit more provocatively, or like wanting to just like fully express myself and like embody my own sexualness. I don't know
Like be a
what word I'm looking for
teenager.
there. Yeah, like, and just enjoy it, but like it just wasn't something that happened, and that's fine. But several relationships and several years later, here I am. I'm almost 33 and like fully embodying my own sensuality and my own sexuality. And like, I think the coolest thing recently has just been like figuring out what I like. Like, that was something that one of my friends had actually asked me, and she was like, because we were talking about my relationship with my husband and like sex, and she was like, "Well, like, what do you even like?" And I was like, I don't know." She's like, "What do you mean you don't know?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like, this is what we do every single time. It happens. We go to bed. It's fine." Like,
Mm.
and yeah, like starting to try and like figure out what it is that I like. Like, how do I want to be talked to? What do I want to do? Like, do I want you to tie me up? Maybe. We'll find out. Like, so like playing through those scenarios in my own mind. And then I also started listening to various podcasts about like just reclaiming your own sensuality and like your own sexuality. I've been doing a lot of different healings around that as well, like theta healing meditation sessions. And then some of your breath work has been like super transformational with that as well, like specifically around the shame. Because I feel like once that part kind of lifted, like, I know it's not gone, it'll never be gone, right? It's something that I'm going to have to work on for forever. But once it lifted, it got better. Then suddenly I was like, yes, yes, I will do that 30 days in a row masturbation challenge. That sounds phenomenal. I'm actually going to go buy a new vibrator. And while I'm at it, might as well buy some lingerie. Is this for anybody else's eyes? No. Did I buy it for myself? Yes, because I wanted to feel sexy, right? So,
Mm,
like, reclaiming all of that. And we'd also kind of chatted, like, with our amongst ourselves about reclaiming various things, right? So one of the things that I feel like both of us keep getting called to, myself more predominantly, is helping women reclaim their own like sexuality and their own sensuality and their own vibrancy and their vaginas, right? Because ultimately, your body is not a gift for somebody else. Like, your pleasure center is part of what connects you to the universe, right? Because ultimately, our vagina is connected to our womb. Our womb is where life is created. When life is created, there is a very tiny spark of light that happens whenever sperm connects with egg, right? And it's been
mm,
scientifically proven. And in a dark space void of light, that's where the magic happens, right? So you are literally a portal for creation, a portal to cr- the creator, like to God, to universe, to spirit, whatever it is that you believe. And like reclaiming that, stepping into that power and like stepping into your sensuality and your sexuality and like meditate and while you're masturbating. That's great. Like, what are you going to tap into? You never know. Like, then go
mm.
out there and create because now you are fully connected not only to like source, but also your body. And that for me has
Do you
been
feel like
huge.
your sexuality is like your creation energy?
Yes.
Mm,
Yes. I feel like oftentimes I specifically have been so stuck in my masculine because I'm so stuck in the rules and the regulations of the things that I have to do, the things that I must do in order to XYZ. And I live so cerebrally that
mhm,
my body, I don't feel very connected to it. Part of that is also disassociation, right? So not only was there like sexual abuse in my past, but I've also had a lot of like physical abuse as well. And so for me, leaving my body and living in my mind has been very comfortable. And so there's a lot of things that I've come to realize recently, like, oh, well, it makes sense why I couldn't lose weight because I'm not really fully connected to my body. And my body feels safer this way, right? And oh, like, no wonder that didn't land because I couldn't feel it like in my body. Like, there's a large part of me that for the longest time was just numb. And so now that I'm
yeah.
tapping into that, like taking away that numbness, like the flow is happening so much easier. And I think
Mhm.
that's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. And the flow is your sexual energy. And I think that, like, you know, a lot of people, even when they use the word intimacy, they think, okay, it's intimacy with somebody else, it's sex, it's sexual. But this is something I think that like you and I are also, I don't know what's on my ring. Sorry, I got very distracted by my ring for a moment. Actually, this is the ring from my first boyfriend. Shout out to him, bless him. He gave me a promise ring saying, I promised for us to be together for as long as we're together. At 17. It was so funny. Anyways, and we had already had sex at that point. So what was I saying? Yeah. So like in terms of like the intimacy, like so many people see intimacy as like sex, like this is like, between me and somebody else. But intimacy is connection, right? Like intimacy is depth of connection
Mm.
and deepening, going past that level and that next level and that next level, kind of like the onion that you were talking about before, right? Like it's like, okay, I'm going deeper into this connection, deeper into this connection. And I think that this is something that you're also reclaiming right now around your body is intimacy with yourself, intimacy with your body, right? And like cultivating that more through touching yourself, through like nourishing yourself with like self massage, through the breath work, through like all of these physical things that you get to do. And also just like talking to yourself, like it doesn't even need to be like talking like dirty to yourself, but like exploring like what do I want? What do I like? How do I want to talk to myself? How do I want to be talked to? And like creating that intimacy, even just like looking in the mirror and looking at your body and like bringing love to these parts of your body where you know you have historically put shame onto, you
Mhm.
know? And like I know for myself, even, you know, there were times when I had would look in the mirror and I'd be like, oh, you know, this part or this part. And I'd be like, my hips were too wide. And it made no sense because I was so tiny. But like, I was like, you know, my hips are too wide. And now when I look in the mirror, I'm just like, oh my God, like beautiful, gorgeous. Like, what I'm so lucky to have this body, even though like I've been sick a lot. Like, I'm so grateful for this body. And this is where the sensuality comes in because this body is what allows me to smell the most beautiful smells and like literally bring me back to a memory from the past that brings me so much joy and put me back into this beautiful space of gratitude. I'm able to taste like the most like exquisite like taste and like my taste buds go wild and it's like I can taste the sour, I can taste the pungent, I can taste the this and again it can bring you back to like these beautiful memories that like also bring you into gratitude, but it's also this pure shameless enjoyment, like literally being in like the pleasure and the enjoyment of it. And same thing, like again with the body, like I get to like touch and like how good does it feel when I touch myself? How good does it feel when I'm touched in the ways that I desire by somebody else, you know? And like this is what's so incredible about living this human experience and being in this human body is that we get to experience all of these different senses. And this is sensuality. And again, I wanted to point this out because I think that people get sexuality and sensuality confused and they think they're the same thing. Sensuality is tapping into all of your senses and being present in all of your senses, right? So being present with the taste, being present with what you're hearing, like I love audio erotica. I listen to audio erotica, like being present with that, or even just hearing a song and like allowing that to bring me pleasure. Being present with like again, you're seeing like what you're seeing, like I love being at the park. One of my favorite things to do, guys, is going to the park and watching couples interact with each other and watching like not even just couples interact with each other. So like I remember the one day I went to the park and this was like such an incredible day and it made me feel so alive and I was at the park by myself and I was watching this couple like kind of like flirt with each other on the bench and she had her legs over his legs and like they were cuddled up and smiling and giggling and they were living. And then I saw another family and this guy was bringing his mother in on the wheelchair and creating this beautiful moment with their family and like rolling her in and then they were all like laughing and giggling and then these two best friends that were on the bench and they were talking about the guys that they were dating and like watching this woman with her dog and like cuddling up with her dog and feeling so much love with her dog and it's like this is the human experience is being able to watch this love with yourself and with another and living it and being in that intimacy being in that connection and you know being there by myself I could have been like this is I'm by myself, like, fuck, like all of these people, they have someone. But instead, I was looking and I was like, oh my gosh, like looking with my eyes, hearing, smelling like the freshness of like the freshly cut grass and the barbecue that that family was making and being fully in all of my senses and cultivating intimacy with myself, but also intimacy with all of these people as they were living their lives. Because I didn't have to talk to them, but I felt connected to them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. I think one of the biggest things that I've done recently is actually something that you suggested, and that was just like self-romanticizing, which
Mm.
whenever you originally talked to me about that, I was just like, what am I supposed to do to make myself feel sexy or like to really feel into myself? And traditionally speaking, I have always hated baths, right? Like loathed entirely, hated
I
baths.
did not
And
know
then
this.
always, I don't know why, I've always loved being in the water. Like I'm a Pisces. I like swimming. I like all those things. I think part of it though is like I have to clean the bathtub before I get in it most of the time because I've got a
Mm,
daughter, like it's just gross. So it's work,
she's
right? So it's
poopy.
work. Well, yeah, literally the other day it was terrible. But and then I had Fiona, right? And so Fiona wants to get in the bath with me all the time. She does not want to take a bath by herself. So those moments in the bath with Fiona honestly started to open me up to the idea of taking baths because suddenly it wasn't just work. It wasn't just like washing my daughter's hair. Like the times that I get in the bathtub with her and she'll like lay her head against my chest and will just be so peaceful for a few moments. It's like the most beautiful experience. And like that is like intimacy, right? Like it's the most
Hmm.
beautiful, pure form of intimacy. And it's just so amazing. And then after having that experience, every few days, because that's my child. She just wants mommy in the bathtub with her. Mommy needs to be with her at 24/7. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try taking a bath by myself. See what that's like. So came home from work early, put some Epsom salts in the bath, some essential oils, and then whenever I got out of the bath, I put on this body oil that I bought honestly for my daughter originally because she's obsessed with glitter. But it's got like very light gold flecks of like glitter, and it smells like vanilla heaven. And usually I'm not a big vanilla person, but like this is like musky and vanilla-y, and it's just like it just smells like fucking powerful feminine sex, right? Like it's just
Mm,
sexy. And so I'll lather that all over
powerful
myself.
feminine sex.
Right, like, just put it all over the place, and then suddenly I was like, "God damn it, I feel like a goddess, this shit does work." So I put on my oils, and then I do my face stuff because I tend to get so consumed with the things that I need to do for other people that I forget that, like, I should probably wash my face and put on my moisturizer. I should probably
Hmm.
put my body oils on. And then right after I'm done putting those body oils on, let's go ahead and put on a matching jammy set because that makes me feel so much more adorable than my oversized t-shirt and my
Mm.
underwear, right? Like, let's do something that makes me feel good. And that's become a ritual for me. So, like, I will, as often as I can, do that. And oftentimes I'll meditate in the bath for a little while. And that was kind of how I started the whole romanticizing myself. And then started listening to all these podcasts. I think one of the biggest themes that keeps coming up time and time and time again, and like all of our trainings, is all of the women out there that have this like sexual trauma and like repressed sexuality and don't feel comfortable like fully stepping into themselves, and they're dealing with all of these issues. And the thing that just keeps coming to me is like, this is something that needs to be talked about, right? Like, my story is not unique. Like, there are tons of
Mm.
women out there that were molested by a family member from a very young age. There's tons of women out there that were raped. There's tons of women that have dealt with all of these exact same things, but the issue is we all feel like we're special, right? Like, my story's the worst and like this happened, and
I
so
think
like,
we are special. I don't know if I would use the word special, but maybe we
yeah,
all we
no,
all
we
feel
are.
like we're alone in it.
Exactly. That's where I'm going with that, is that we don't feel like anybody else understands, right? So like, because we don't talk about it,
Yeah.
like it gets pushed out. It's shameful. Like, something happened to you. What were you wearing? What were you
Yeah.
doing? Did
Yeah.
you actually say yes and then change your mind and say no because you said yes first, right? Like, that's the way that society's programmed it, is like the blame falls on you. So we don't talk about it and we just keep
I
shoving it in the
remember
closet.
a year ago, I was sexually assaulted by my brother who passed away, his friend, 10 years ago. And a year ago, this came up and it was still impacting me, y'all. And I had already done so much healing around it. But like, Sydney has said so many times, there's layers, there's deeper layers that come up. And yeah, a year ago, I was moving through this and I actually shared it with my Facebook community that I had. And I was like, this is something that I'm moving through. This triggered the opening of two other sexual assault kind of memories that were repressed. when I was like 13, and then again when I was 14 or 15. And after I did this live in the community, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I was like, I need to delete this. People are going to think like that I'm so like fucked for putting this in the community, that I'm talking about this stuff, that I'm crying. Like I don't know if you've ever feel so vulnerable when you're talking about that stuff and like you're being fully transparent and honest about it. Um, I was being fully transparent and honest about it while it was raw, right? Like while I was like, okay, I told my mom that this happened and I told her 10 years later. I had these two, memories that were repressed come up, and I was like moving through all of this, and I shared it while it was raw, while it was happening. And like I said, like I was like, I need to delete this video. Like I should feel embarrassed for talking about this. Like that, and I had already done so much work, but I didn't delete it, guys. I did not delete it, but it was really difficult for me to stay in that vulnerability, right? To stay in that vulnerability because it was like, what are people going to think?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that that's why it's so important to get to the place where we can share and that vulnerability, not just for ourselves, but also so that, like, personally, I feel very called to tell my story because I want others to see, like, you're not alone. This is more common than you think. Like, not to like brush it under the rug or like make it like, oh, okay, but like it's not taboo. Like, this stuff has happened and you get to embody yourself. You get to pleasure yourself. You get to think about having sex with somebody and not only think about like, how can I make this man enjoy this better? You get to like live in your power, right? So like, I think one of the coolest things that's come from like this 30-day masturbation challenge is the fact that I feel like I've gone from kind of dull to a little bit more vibrant, right? Like a few
Mm,
people have even asked, like, have you done something different? Like, no, I haven't done shit other than masturbate, which also is something that like societally we don't talk about because like, ew, that is so disgusting. Why would you even talk about that? Like, you need to go to church. Wash your mouth out with some soap, young lady. Like, no, I honestly feel like the reason why a lot of these things don't get talked about is because whenever we tap into that power, whenever we tap into that magnetism, we become unstoppable. And what would happen
mhm.
if we had a world full of women who were unstoppable?
What would happen? What would happen? And like, I think this is something that's so amazing about the movement that we're a part of, is that it's not just about becoming unstoppable, it's about becoming the like the new leaders of this world, like, and I think that men are learning from us, and they're shifting, and um they are becoming more appreciative of like the feminine energy and what the feminine brings. And also, like, the more we are in these leadership positions, the more compassion that we bring into them, the more we work on our own, developing our own leadership within ourselves and leading ourselves, the more we are going to change this world. And that's like, it's about all of us becoming unstoppable, right? Like, it's not just about women becoming unstoppable, it's about all of us becoming unstoppable, all of us, because like we are, and I know this is like very like, kumbaya, but we are one, right? Like we are one, we are all reflections of each other, and we all get to celebrate each other. We all get to help each other, like calibrate to higher levels of being, and I'm certainly, personally not one for like, I'm here to ascend. I'm not about ascension. I've already tapped into that earlier in my journey through spirituality, and to be honest, I'm not, that doesn't resonate with me. I'm here to live. I'm here to be a human being. I'm here to experience being human. I'm here to love. I'm here to lead. I'm here to impact. I'm here to influence. And I'm here to experience it all. And ascension has nothing to do with that. I think that that's something that I've seen a lot of the spiritual community talk about and really get lost in the sauce around, because ascension to me is very connected to ego. and less connected to spirit and more like, okay, well, I need to show the world that I'm ascending, and this is very much a linear model of being. Um, but I believe that we get to bring each other up, you know, and it's about all of us becoming unstoppable, all of us, you know, and and I want to reiterate this because guys, just because we're talking about our experiences where we've had issues with men, where we've been taught that like we have to serve men, that we've been taught that our only value is you know, our physical body and our sexuality. Like I also want to say like there's good men out there. I want
Oh
to
yeah.
reiterate this. There are very good men out there that have been doing work on themselves, that have been listening to women, that have been listening to the feminine, that, you know, have been putting in the work. You know, there are men out there. And I want to reiterate this because I don't want people to think that this is something where it's like, okay, we hate men. No, there is a huge issue in society as well around hating men, actually. You know, when we go to if you go to a nightclub, I remember this happened 3 years ago for me when I, 3 years ago for me when I was really working on my own internal masculine and my feminine energies, but really, like, really on my own internal masculine and the integrity of my own internal masculine, the showing up and following through in my own internal masculine, and like really nourishing this part of myself. And I was out, and it was like the song where it's like ABCDEFU da da da, and everybody sang it. Everyone and their mother at the club sang it. And honestly, I was like, I feel sick to my stomach because this is what has been embedded in society is that men are pieces of shit, and they're not.
Yeah, no, they're not. And also, I feel like they have been, so it goes both ways, right? So like women, we've been bred to serve them. Men have also been bred to have no feelings, to pull yourself up by your
Mm-hmm.
bootstraps, to completely ignore their feminine energy, and to like live in the immature masculine, like
Mm-hmm.
100%. That's the way that society has programmed them. And so while I can definitely like see sides of feminism and agree with those, I'm also never going to be the person that's like all men suck because they don't. And also
Mm-hmm.
like realistically, like you said, there's a ton of them that are out there that are actually doing the work. But also, just like the cards were stacked against us from the get go, the cards were stacked against them from the get go too, right? Like
Yeah.
being a man is not easy. Being a woman's
Mm-hmm.
not easy. But like it's still not easy for dudes out here, right? Like they also have to deal with that, like the stigma, like, well, you just want me for my body, but not all do, right? And so there are plenty out there that are not buttholes, for a lack of good terms, that are like out there, they're doing the do, and that's amazing. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because
Yeah.
like really like society is just definitely like fucked or like these last several generations over because like why did men have to be so strong all the time? Why is it not okay for men to cry? It is okay for them to cry. It is okay for them to have emotion. And because honestly, like at the end of the day, if you are not fully open and fully transparent and fully naked, all holds back in a relationship, like it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to go well. And the way that I've seen this is through all of my relationships, right? So there's been me like
Mm-hmm.
fully naked, fully like in surrender, right? Like giving a lot and then not having that in return. And then in
Have
my
you been
female
fully in
friendships,
surrender?
at times, not
Oh,
recently, no, but
okay.
at times, whenever they start off, whenever a
Okay.
relationship will start off, it is very much like I am in that like I want to share everything with you. Like I want you to understand me fully. I want to get to know you like on a cellular level. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's only like in my like female relationships that I've had that type of intimacy, right? Like with
Mm-hmm.
you and like my friend Jordan and like um having that like full transparency, like no judgment, just straight love, like, and that's been amazing. So I know someday in the future there will be a relationship with a lovely man, and we will both be fully transparent and fully naked and fully like just ourselves. And that is something
Mhm.
to look forward to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for those of you that are just hopping in and you're like, what the fuck are they talking about in terms of the masculine and feminine energies? So, we all have our own internal masculine and our own internal feminine. This is everywhere. Okay, guys, this is everywhere in nature. This happens with plants. This happens with, there's always this give and this receive, even just when we're breathing, right? We're receiving this are we receiving oxygen? Yeah, we're receiving this
Oxygen and
oxygen and then we're
CO2.
putting
Yeah.
back out this carbon dioxide, right? So even just in the action of breathing, there's this giving and this receiving. So there's always going to be this duality. And I know that, we're in a place, how I just bit my own tongue. We're in this place in society right now where we're like, fuck duality. But the thing is that it's here, it's real, it's happening, it's embedded in DNA, it's embedded in nature. There's X chromosomes, there's Y chromosomes. Like this is how it works. This is how it's been. And for yourself, you have your own internal feminine, you have your own internal masculine. Nobody, absolutely nobody, is, an exception to that. No matter what gender you are, you have an internal masculine, you have an internal feminine. I don't, what if you're Z, Zay, bi, whatever, you're all of the different genders. Um, Hopefully nobody comes for me for saying all that, but no matter what gender you are, you have both of these. So this masculine energy, this is the giver, this is the doer, this is the logic, and this is the physical experience. So the physical, like your physical body, the feminine energy is the energetics. She creates the energetic landscape for other people to respond to. She is the emotional side, right? So for those of you that haven't heard of this before, I just wanted to put this out there. She's also the receiver. And unfortunately, like we've been taught that the woman is the giver because of the mother archetype. And actually I for the longest time I could not figure this out. Like I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. The mother archetype is the giver. This doesn't make sense to me. And my mentor pointed this out recently, is that the mother archetype is a masculine archetype of the feminine.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
actually like we've been taught that like this is the masculine archetype of the that the woman is the giver, right? But the feminine is the receiving energy. And like we just did a training around this and it was so beautiful, is because we were talking about like the purity of receiving and the purity of giving. Um, but I wanted to kind of bring this in for people that like may not understand, right? And what we've been seeing, and like, yeah, the patriarchy did create this because we had a whole crew of men that were in their immature masculine, which is I need to do to control, I need to do to divide, I need to do to, I need to repress my emotions. Like this is all immature masculine. And what happened is we had all of these men running the world that were in their immature masculines, and then that became the energy of the whole world. So we ended up
Yeah.
having men, women, all genders in their immature masculine. So we had these women that started becoming more masculine, and they needed to be in control, and they needed to give for validation, and they needed to push through, and they needed all of the like to really be in that immature masculine energy. I need to control, I need to control, I need to control, because the immature masculine that was created in society created an unsafe environment. So I need to control in order to be safe, right? But then the same thing happened with men. We either had men moving into I need to control and being in that energy, and then we had people butting heads because they both wanted to be in control, or we had men becoming super like submissive and like not in the giving energy, not in the provider energy in any way, shape, or form. And we had these men being like, okay, well, my woman's going to take care of me, my woman's going to pay the bills, my woman's, and like I don't know how it happened for you in the US, but at least in Canada it was like we had all of these men that were just like, I'm just going to smoke weed and stay at home. I'm gonna like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, um, I'm just going to be in hookup culture because that means that I'm not
Yeah.
responsible for anything. That means I don't have to follow through on anything. And that, right. And again, that was the immature masculine energy. And what I love about the work that Sydney and I do, guys, is that we are moving you into your mature feminine and your mature masculine because you embody both. You're more in your feminine if you are a more feminine woman, but you get to embody both in different areas of your life and within your relationship. So, even when you're in a partnership, the feminine leads the emotional and the energetic, and the masculine leads the physical, right? And the logical, and we have been so stuck in the physical and the logical that we've been missing the energetic and the emotional. And these our feminine has become severely underdeveloped, sorry, underdeveloped, it's my own word now. But our feminine has become severely underdeveloped. And because of that, we've seen just so many relationships break and crumble. We've seen so many women burning out or getting
Yeah.
burned. We've seen so many people staying in relationships past their expiry date. We've seen so many women being like, men are losers, men suck, men this, right? And then we've seen, so many men um, being like not embracing their feminine and just being completely immature, like projecting their emotions into situations or insecurities into situations because they haven't dealt with their insecurities. We have been seeing them repress their emotions completely, and like it's it's wild. Like, and this is why we're moving into this feminine leadership, because she is the one that's going to lead us into a new world, into a more compassionate world, into a world of majesty and maturity and love, where we appreciate one another's differences, where we appreciate the human experience, where we understand that mistakes happen and we get to grow from them. And we don't just focus on, this is my failure. And this is like a big thing that is, again, a part of the immature masculine. You failed, you failed, stop trying.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like the more that I tap into my feminine, because again, like I said, I've been living in my masculine for a very, very long time. The more that I start to tap into the feminine, the more repelled by the whole boss babe culture I am, right? So like while there is a time and a place for like pushing and there's a time and a place for all of those things, the more that I like start to embody and like sit with my feminine, the more that that does not feel good anymore.
Mm,
Like it just does not feel good. I am in a space where I no longer want to push. I want to attract what I desire. And that I think is like the most beautiful thing is like figuring out that that is possible and that you don't have to work so damn hard because on the flip side of that, like we aren't men. And so while we both like embody the feminine and the masculine, we have also been bred to work like a man, think like a man, do like a man, and we are not built
oh,
for that at all. Like our bodies are not built for that, our brains are not built for that,
our hearts.
unless yeah, like it's not what we're meant for, like at our core. So at the end of the day, like the more that I tap into this and the more that I see that, the more I'm like, you know what? I used to think it was fucking ridiculous whenever a man would open a door for a woman, right? Because I can open that door my goddamn self. Why do I need you to open a door? No. Now I'm like, please open the door for me. I would love for a man to open up every single door. Come get my car door. Like, how freaking beautiful is
Mm,
that? Not
mm-hmm.
because I cannot do it myself, but because that is giving and that's showing
Mm,
like that love. And I want to be in that energy of receiving and that energy of gratitude. So I think we do need to do an entire podcast about just like masculine and feminine energetics and how those work.
yes.
Uh Definitely in the very, very near future.
We will definitely do a podcast around that, y'all, because this is, at the root of our work. And this is something that I've been working on for the past like 5 to 6 years, is my own masculine and my own feminine energies. And I still like up level. I still study. I still work on this because it's changed my life, like it's changed my life and it's changed other people's lives. And just understanding that there's so much value in just being in my energy. And I don't have to give. like just being in my energy and people get to enjoy that. And like the amount of people that I have come up to me and be like you're just so like in, inspirational. I just love being around you. I just love like being in your energy. I just love like, and I'm not doing anything. I'm being
Yeah,
myself.
like I just wanted to sit with you. Like I've had that happen a few times where people will come into my office, not because they even need anything, not even because they really want to talk to me, but because they just want to be in that space. And like, what a freaking
Mm-hmm.
gift. Like, how beautiful is that? That like
Mm-hmm.
that energy that you're putting out is so delicious that people just want to be in it. Like, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and that's the feminine. That is the
I love it.
feminine. So, we did kind of we took a few detours on this conversation, but we're going to come back. We're going to talk more about the masculine and feminine energetics in another episode. But this has really been a huge part of, I think, both of us reclaiming our own sexuality and reclaiming, the joy of our bodies and being in our bodies and feeling pleasure in our bodies and also leading our lives with pleasure again because we when you look around it's like there's so many people that are just like I have to do this or I'm doing this like because I'm supposed to do this or I should do this and why don't we get to lead our life in pleasure? Like we get to choose pleasure. It's just something that has been ingrained in us that we don't. And again, that's because of that immature masculine, right? So thank you for being here. We are so appreciative of you spending your time with us and sitting with us. We hope that this felt like, just sitting and having a coffee with us, like because that's how we wanted this to be set up. Like we didn't want this to be like, okay, this is a very structured interview and we're going to talk about A, B, and C, and we cannot divert from A, B, and C. This is not how Sydney and I work. This is not how our brains work. This is not how our heart works. We wanted this to flow. We wanted this to feel like you're a part of something because you are.
Yes, I love that. You are a part of the Powerhouse Fem.
Mm. We love you and we are so grateful that you chose to spend your time with us today. And we cannot wait to see you for the next episode. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.